to Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. Happy anniversary.
To us?
Yeah.
To Clarity on Fire?
Nope. Think hard, Kristen. I knew that she would have no idea what I was talking about.
She's looking right at me like,
I'm like, come on, figure it out. Figure it out.
Happy anniversary. It's now April.
Happy anniversary, Kristen. You're going to feel really dumb to this podcast.
Oh, of course. To our podcast.
We're on the podcast and it didn't occur to you that that's what the anniversary was about.
4 years, right?
Yeah. Like April, I think it was technically April 9th, but yeah, April 8th.
Wow.
April 9th, April 8th, something like that. Yeah.
That's
so it's been
crazy.
4 years that we've been podcasting and Kristen hardly remembers any of it, apparently.
I should know this too, because I'm literally getting a virtual assistant to work on a whole project about our podcast. And I just told her it's since April 2018.
You told her that like 3 days ago.
3 days ago. Yep. Love it. My brain is obviously in about 16 places.
Even if it had been in one, I think it would have taken you a while to figure that out.
Probably.
So anyway, yes.
Well, I was also thinking that this is our 10-year anniversary in business, but I didn't know if it was, I don't think it's April exactly. Do you remember the month? You probably do.
Well, it depends on what you count. I kind of am counting it as like when we enrolled in coach training, which was technically May 2018.
Okay. Our first weekend was in July.
Yeah. So, but we probably started a business before we enrolled in coach training.
Legally a business.
So we're just calling it 10 years. Like this whole year is like our 10-year, our 10-finity. So
you could spread it out for a whole year.
Yeah.
There's so many multiple milestones.
Well, when
in that
businesses
first year.
do that, they do like celebrating 10 years in business, right? And it's just like a whole banner and they get the whole friggin' year is like.
Maybe we can put a banner up on our website.
We really should, which should be new at some point soon, by the way.
Yeah. We're very close to launching the new site.
I mean, don't get too excited. It's going to look, just like a different version of the current site, but like, I'm excited about some of the new features that we'll have on there. Anyway. Okay, well.
And finally, anyone who's been a avid listener to the podcast will remember our horror story of our photo shoot for this new website.
Oh, yeah.
And surprisingly, we got some decent photos out of that nightmare of a photo shoot.
You know how much I hate looking at myself. So just as much as you hate listening to yourself. So I don't, I'm like, I think these could be better. But they're fine for now. They're fine. Whatever. Oh, we'll update our podcast art soon too, by the way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Look forward to that. Look. If that's what you're looking forward to, we really need to help you. You need coaching if that's something you find exciting. Also, avid listeners of this podcast might remember our guest because this is her second time. We've been podcasting long enough that we've had multiple repeat guests now.
I told her
that's not just laziness.
I told her she's joined a special elite group, which is the multiple appearance on the Clarity on Fire.
Do like an SNL, you get like a bathrobe or a smoking jacket or something if you've hosted like 5 or 6 or 7 times. Yeah.
Yes, let's do that.
I'm not gonna give people a smoking jacket.
Oh man, that's good.
But yeah, Terece was on the podcast years ago.
Yep.
I don't even know.
We mentioned it in our intro with each other. It was about perfectionism. And I'll link to it so you can go find it if you wanted to hear.
It's a good one.
Back when she was on originally, we brought it back at some point because it was so good. And so now you get to hear the latest with Terece.
Okay. Should I read her bio? Because she's here for a very different reason this time.
Yes.
Okay. Teresa's written a book and her bio says attached, which does not mean attached to this email. The name of the book is attached. When I first read it, I thought that's what it meant.
I did the same thing. That's why I italicized it for you.
I got it. Yes, that really helps. But when you're italics doesn't really translate very well to podcasts. So attached, the name of her book, is her debut novel and passion project. She says, I've had this story in my mind for 2 years now, and I'm finally ready to share it with the world, or ready as I'll ever be. As a recovering people pleaser and caregiver, this is also a self-imposed, self-development, graduate level project that ultimately gets my voice out into the world in all of its glory. The good, the bad, and the deep. It's equal parts terrifying and exciting to share this story with you all, as well as my journey on how I got here. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to this podcast episode. And if you are new to self-development, you have found your people here at Clarity on Fire. Clarity on Fire and Kristen have helped me define my dreams and supported me to make them come true. I wouldn't be where I am today without their wise words and Kristen's coaching. Thank you for all you do. I like how just
I didn't tell her to say that. She just
we did not
so kind.
We didn't pay her or intimidate her to say that. You said you had a little technical glitch with her toward the end of this episode.
We did. Just at the very end, as we were saying goodbye, she got kicked off Zoom. So I said goodbye, and then it's just nothing. So if you're thinking Terece snubbing me at the end,
she was not.
She was not. We just had a weird Zoom glitch. So just wanted you to know if it's a little abrupt, that's what was going on. But you didn't miss any content. We were already done.
Okay. Well, I am looking forward to listening to this. I have not yet at the time. I don't listen to it till it comes out. So I'm looking forward to hearing about her story of writing her first novel. I have aspirations to write a novel or a series of novels. If I don't write fantasy at some point, my life will have been wasted. So look forward to that at some point in the future.
Just forget all the other good things you've done.
Nope. If I'm not writing about a tall, brooding, dark-haired man at some point with magical powers, what have I been doing with my whole life? So I'm very proud of Terece for writing a novel. It's really hard.
This will inspire you, I think.
And I
you and everyone.
Really great when normal people just do things that feel like it's, other people can do that, but not me. Well, maybe not. So, all right. We will see you at the end.
Hi, Terece.
Hi, Kristen.
I have to say, I'm excited to have you back on the podcast. You're now joining a small group of people who we featured more than once on our podcast. It's a small circle, but now you're in the inner circle.
I'm part of it. Well, you know how much I love you guys, so I'm just honored to be here.
I mean, I could probably have you on like every other month and we'd have something really interesting to get into. So twice feels like not enough, frankly. But yes, our first interview was about ditching people pleasing, which I will link to for anyone who's curious. And while I think you would agree, Terece, it's a lifelong struggle for us people pleasers. But I also know you've come a really long way in that arena. Especially just in life in general, but really even since that podcast episode. So it might be fun to go back and listen to that, even though I know we both feel weird about listening to our own voice, but it would be fun to go back and listen to it in comparison with today's conversation.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was a good starting point for me, for sure. I mean, that was like the first step in this journey of bringing me to now. So it would be really fun to listen to again.
We're going to have a very different conversation today. Well, I'm sure people pleasing will always come up because it usually does.
It comes up.
But I guess people know this by now because we read your intro already, but you wrote a book.
I did.
Well, at this point, at this moment that we're recording, you've completed your first draft, which alone is a huge feat. How many people who say they want to write a book never actually complete their first draft? That alone is a gigantic milestone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, am I right that you're in the editing stages? You're preparing for publication, all that fun stuff?
Correct. Yeah. I've been accepted for publication through New Degree Press. And so we're moving into the editing portion of my manuscript and final product book. So yeah, we're into the next steps.
That's exciting. How does it feel to be this far along?
It's so exciting. Like, I just can't believe that I've done it. And at this time, I always kind of thought this would be something that I'd do way later in life. So it's just so rewarding. I mean, I've done some other projects in my life academically, and this is by far the most meaningful and passion-driven project I've ever done. It's been a really incredible experience.
Well, I've been really excited to see your energy and your enthusiasm through this whole process. And it's only gotten bigger, if that's possible.
I know. It really has. It's been where it's like I was quiet about it, and then I started talking about it. Now it's just part of my life, and it's such an incredible experience. Just to write a book is a whole level of self-development and learning yourself through that process, because it's pretty vulnerable, it's pretty, it's your baby,
Yeah. Oh, we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
We're going to get it. I always tell my entrepreneurial, curious clients that starting a business is one of the most intense personal development programs that you can put yourself through.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the same thing is true about writing a book.
Absolutely.
You thought you'd done a lot already. And then
we kind of joked about it. This is like my graduate level self-development project for myself. So absolutely.
So I know people are going to be curious to hear what your book is about. And I promise we'll get into that. Like, that's coming. But before we get there, I really want to focus on you and your story before we talk about the story that you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to first start with, I'm imagining some people who are hearing you talk about the fact that you're writing a book and that this is something that you've been wanting to do for a while. They might have this idea that if you're writing a book, you must be a writer, and you've probably had a career in writing or some kind of similar creative venture. So I would like for you to set the record straight and share a little bit about your career so far.
Well, I have not done creative writing since I was in high school. So I haven't done anything like this for over 15 years, which is crazy. And I am by trade a nurse practitioner. I have a doctor of nursing practice. So I was really good at writing research papers. APA, throw out to all those science people, referencing facts. There was no emotion in my writing. So I really had a lot of experience with writing several research papers. I had a 3-year-long research project that I did, and it was all very sciencey based. So I am not a creative by nature. I think deep down I've always been one, but it's just not been something I've done since I was a kid, truly. So this is totally new to me. And I went big by saying I'm going to write a book.
You're like, I haven't written creatively since high school, and now we're going to jump right into writing and publishing a book. I love it.
Yeah.
That suits you. That suits your personality.
It does. It really does. Yeah. Go big or go home. Like,
exactly.
No, it's actually, go big, then go home. Yeah.
I was going to say, I want you to tell people your motto, because I say it in my own head all the time. So
oh my gosh,
make that distinction, please.
So there's go big and go home, or go big, then go home. And I do the whole go big, then go home, because I need to go out there, do my thing, and then I need a lot of rest. And so
it's not the either or, right? It's not the like go big or go home. It's like, no, we're going to go big, and then we're going to go home and we're going to introvert and we're going to rest.
Yes.
And I love that. It's a good balance.
Yes. It's amazing balance because I definitely need both of it to be able to do this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So that was a little tangent for you, but that's a motto that I want everyone else to be able to take on because it's one of my favorites that came from you.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give just that really quick backstory on your career because I don't want people to think that they have to have done something creative for years and years or their whole life to be able to dive into this level. So I think sharing that hopefully is going to give some people permission that you don't have to be, if you're interested in some sort of creative project, but you've been doing something really sciencey or really completely outside the bounds of the type of creativity you want to do, that doesn't mean it's all dried up and that's just too bad. You missed your chance. Not at all.
Right. Exactly. And truly what it is I started pretty small. I started with journaling privately, and then I started to really enjoy that journaling. And I remember writing one day about the sun coming through a window and how it looked and what it made me feel and everything. I was like, well, that's lovely and beautiful. And then I started to post little stories on social media, actually. As much as social media can be positive or negative, like that's where I started to just put little pieces of my writing out there. And then I started to get some really good feedback. And then it kind of snowballed into writing a book. But it definitely started out with a little bit of playing around to get to that point. But it wasn't like I was writing for any sort of, journal or anything like that. It was definitely just a little bit of playing around and exploring to get to this point.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I think there's a lot of power in giving yourself permission to play for a little bit with your creativity, with your craft that you would like to develop, because there's no pressure in that. When it's just you and your journal, you can write whatever you want and it doesn't have to be good. Right. If you hadn't written a word, except for a sciencey research paper since high school, and then jumped literally right into writing a book, that I imagine that would have been pretty paralyzing. But you gave yourself some creative playroom leading up to it so that when you made that decision, you felt like you'd been slowly honing it along the way.
Right. Because I actually kind of forgot that I wanted to write a book up until I did the artist way. I forgot that I wanted to be a writer at all. So I had to unmask the fact that I've always wanted to do this through play and journaling and creative exploration. I know that you've had a couple people talk about the artist way in the past, and I think you have a whole book club episode about it. But man, that book really, really made a big difference to getting me to the point where I'm like, no, I can do this. And it's something I really want to do.
Yeah, we do have an episode about it, and Rachel and I didn't even fully do it. It's such a intensive, it's so intensive. And yet we still were having these big reactions. It's powerful. I don't know what magic is in that book, but it is a powerful process, even if you do 5% of it.
Oh my gosh. And I went deep. I mean, obviously I went deep into it.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
That's who I am. And it was life-changing. I don't say that lightly. That book was life-changing. And if you want to start to even just play with creativity, which even if it's just for your own personal purposes, bringing joy, activity, nature, all these different things into your life, it really does change your life to look at things a little bit differently. So that definitely was a huge component for me to get confident enough to say, hey, I want to write a damn book. This is what I want to do. So that was almost a 3-month process with that book of journaling, playing around, painting, exploring, and then really turning to like, no, words really, really move me, and stories move me, and I want to write this story. And it just kind of snowballed.
Mm-hmm. I love how you said, I want to hone in on the way you said that, which was, I forgot that I always wanted to write a book. It's funny how that happens, right? So I'm curious,
wild.
Now, looking back, how early can you remember in your life having that dream of being a writer?
So I tried to think about this, and I know that probably when I was around 10-ish, I really started to read Roald Dahl books, Witches and James and the Giant Peach. And I just got so into those stories. And I thought, wow, like you can really teach lessons through those types of stories. And those are the types of stories I was always gravitated towards, the ones that were introspective and had some moral lesson to it. So it just taught me a lot. I learned a lot through stories, but it wasn't until I was probably in middle school. No, it was sixth grade. So I never was really like the top student. I was good. I kind of hung with the rest of them. But we had that state testing WASL test, and I got the highest grade that you could possibly get. And it actually alerted people to the fact that I had a little bit of a talent in writing. And so I got into an honors program. And in that honors program, we got to do a little bit of alternative education and different things. And that's when I really got into like, no, I really like writing. I like being able to tell my story through writing. And so I got a little bit more creativity play there. And then in high school, they really start to encourage you. Which direction do you want to go? Which direction you want to go? I didn't see any writers. We had a local newspaper. I was in a town of right around 2,000 people. So there wasn't a ton of creative people that were making it. And so I kind of put the writing thing down in high school. So age 10, lost it. And it didn't seem feasible. Didn't seem realistic.
Makes sense. I think a lot of us do that with our childhood dreams and talents that don't feel like they're going to pay the bills, or we haven't seen a lot of models of them being a traditional career path. Right. So you went in a different direction. And then I'm curious your thoughts about how do you think you get to a point where you just forget what you loved so much? Because this is not just a you thing. I think this happens a lot. Yeah. So what do you think is happening that we're so clear as kids or teenagers or at a younger age of what we love and what we're good at, and then we just forget? What do you think happens?
I think it's all the noise. I really think it's all the noise of what people tell us, what society tells us, what is shown, especially back then in the media, and in what I think it's all this input and information that says like, this doesn't make sense. People don't do this. That's the 1%. So yeah, you can do it as a hobby, but you gotta pick something that makes more sense. It's more realistic. And I think a lot of that, especially, with parents and mentors and whoever tells you that, it's all out of love and kindness because they want you to be safe and secure, And so I think you're listening. For me, I listened to people. I observed. I looked around, and who seemed the happiest, those were the ones who had these careers that were very driven, very practical, and checked all the boxes. And so I think it's the input that we get from society in general, and then the the reassurance or the applause that you get as you go down that road,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like as I'm going down as a nurse, I remember being in my undergraduate, and I wasn't even a nurse yet. And I told people about like, I'm going into nursing, I'm pre-nursing. And everyone would just kind of like nod their heads like, oh, she's smart. Oh, she's got her head on straight. Oh,
Yep.
you know. And so you just get this constant nudge of like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, because none of us do. And then you get this nudge from everyone, your peers, your, you know, people that are on the journey ahead of you, younger
Mm-hmm.
people behind you are all saying like, oh, she's got it figured out. She's got it figured out. Okay. No, I don't. I just am thinking I do. And you're all telling me that I am. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, obviously I am, everyone. You know, and so that's the
Mm-hmm.
external validation that you're getting. And it makes sense because everyone wants you to be happy, secure. You know, the idea is honorable, but I really think it's that external gratification that you're experiencing as you're going down this track, as
Mm-hmm.
well as what you've been told.
Yeah. You get so much praise and validation for going down more traditional paths that feel like they're going to lead to success. And the things that felt exciting and felt aligned when you were younger start to feel like they get deprioritized into hobby status. And then you get busy with just life and being an adult. And then the hobbies end up getting put on a dusty shelf somewhere. So yeah, at some point you forget that was something that was a love of yours.
Well, and here's the deal, you know, like we choose these directions and they take a lot of energy and effort, you know, like being a nurse and then becoming a nurse practitioner. I mean, that's a lot of time, studying, effort. It's just a lot of memorizing. And so do you have time to even look internally and be like, oh, I miss writing, or I miss doing that? And it's like, okay, you do an elective. That's a whole nother thing on your plate that is just like, well, I'm going to just kind of get through it. I remember taking an art history class as to try to get into like actual art classes. And I just remember being like, okay, come on. Like, so then I just barely paid attention and then lost engagement because you had to go through these steps to get to the actual class of taking art. So then it was like, here's another hoop. I'm not going to spend my time doing that when I am barely making it through my studies to get into nursing, which was really competitive, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so then life gets busy and careers get busy and take a lot of energy, take a lot of time, take a lot of your focus.
You get married and you have, you
life
know,
gets more complicated.
Other life experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it sounds like it took going through something deep and introspective and creative, and that created space for you to revisit some of those old desires, like the artist way. I'm not saying that's the only way you can get back in touch, but that's a very powerful and guided way to do that.
Right.
And so that reminded you that this was something you always loved and were good at and enjoyed, and that was a dream of yours. But that's a different thing than remembering your dream is different than giving yourself permission to bring it back. So tell me about that part of it.
So it went through some phases. So like I went through getting into nurse practitioning, starting my job and being like, oh no, this didn't give me all the happiness and joy and, you know, confidence and all the things that I was looking for. And so I had to essentially meet myself at that point in my life. Cause I was like, okay, I did all the things. I walked the walk. I checked the boxes. I did the things. And that's what that first episode we did about was my people pleasing and kind of like revisiting who I was and introducing myself to myself. So that took some time, you know, and then I had to kind of work through that, heal, start start playing, realizing that I wanted more of a work-life balance. So then what did I do? I pulled back from full-time and I kind of went down to part-time, and then I kept going down to part-time, and then I'm down to like 0.6. And then I had all this space to do all this different stuff. And for a while it was just, let's play, let's try, let's do. And then the switch going from I want to write a book to writing a book came from, this is woo woo, but it's the universe. Like, I was really following some like clues and triggers and all this different stuff. And I initially wrote it down in one of my morning pages, one of my journal entries. And I wrote it down, and I'd told a few people about my story, and I'd, let people in, and they're like, oh, that's interesting. That's cool. You should do that. And I'm like, yeah. And then the power of 3 is kind of one of the things that I tend to follow. If I've heard it 3 times, like, I need to really pay attention. And this Creators Institute through Georgetown University, I'd heard it 3 times, all through you guys, of course. So first it was with Todd. Is it Todd Thiel? Is that how you say his name?
Todd
44 Regrets.
Yes.
Yeah. So first I heard it through him, and he was one of the episodes. And then I'm part of your Patreon, and there's another member who she was going through the program. And then I heard it through you one last time. And that was in October. And I was like, okay, I need to just look into this thing. Like, I've heard it through this 3rd time. I hear you. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to just look into it. And then it said that the enrolling period was in the fall. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to put in the application. And if I hear anything back, great. Not fine. So I immediately hear something back. We book a phone interview with Eric Custer, who's the lead professor for this. And then he gets me enrolled into it in like the next day. And then we start the next week. So it went from like, I'm saying it, I'm following it, I'm doing it. And then it was just like, no, now's your time. So, that's where it just kind of tumbled into my lap. And then later on, when I announced it to like people on Facebook and Instagram and all that, saying it out to other people was when it made it really real. So the piece that I want people to know is that it's okay to quietly just kind of brew and try and process. And then when you feel like it's ready and you're there to make it happen, it's like a click. So it's just kind of wild in that stance.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's really doing your dreams a service to keep them private for a little while, and maybe not share them with anyone, or maybe just share them with some safe people. Right. Because if you had come out, guns blaring right out the gate, I had this idea in my morning pages, I'm going to write this book, and just told everybody, you would have gotten a lot of feedback.
Oh yeah.
a lot of feedback. I mean,
I did.
I'm sure you still did, right?
Yeah. It was funny.
But if it had been a brand new baby idea, and you're getting all this feedback, that's a lot to process and could make you waver. So I agree. I think let an idea grow within you for a little while and see if it grows roots and see if it gets stronger and more enticing and more powerful. And then maybe slowly start to share. And by the time you're sharing with people who may not be the most safe, you're confident in it. You're solid in it, and it's easier to withstand.
And I would say more confident, because there's even when I put that out there, I was like, okay, here we go. Because people pleaser is talking about how I went down a path of being a nurse practitioner, very traditional, and now I'm kind of breaking away from that. I got a lot of feedback of like, what are you doing? Like, that is the most trusted career. Everyone loves nurse practitioner, all these different reasons why. And I'm like, yeah, that's what got me here, you know? And I totally honor and appreciate that journey. And I still enjoy that I have that as my day job and everything like that. That's not quitting it. That was a big question. So are you done? And it's like, well, what if I was? You know, it's very interesting feedback that you get from people. So it still is shaky. You know, there's still times I'm like, what am I doing? But I still have this deeper knowing because I did a lot of that work to be like, no, this is what I really want to do, at least in this part of my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, it goes back to what we were saying before about when you decide you're going to do a stable, traditional path that people can get on board with, you're going to get that validating feedback. But imagine if you'd been back in high school or maybe early college when you were moving into nursing, and instead you said, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to be a writer. You would have gotten different feedback.
Oh my gosh. And with where I was at, I wouldn't have been strong enough in it. Like, bless you people who have that, like that inner just drive to be yourself at all costs. Like, great, awesome. But there's people like me that I needed to get more confident in who I was before I could actually do this. Otherwise I would have been shaken for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it's no wonder we put some of those ideas on the back burner for a while. And maybe it's okay. Maybe we need to grow in our own understanding of ourselves and get more solid and confident before bringing them back off the shelf and dusting them off and giving it a try again. So that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you've wasted time. For anyone who's like, oh, I wasted all this time because I didn't do this untraditional thing because I went the traditional route and now I'm kicking myself. Well, you might have needed to do that to be able to pour yourself into this new idea that's going to be more vulnerable.
I absolutely do not regret the direction I took. And I couldn't have said that probably even 2 or 3 years ago, but because of all the experiences I've had, especially with humans, as healing them and treating them and all that, it really has let me into an intimate part of people's lives that a lot of people don't get to experience. So now I get to write about not those people's lives, but that intimate connection that you get with humans that maybe you wouldn't have gotten if you were, not working with humans or doing other creative projects. Because a lot of those, it is kind of usually by yourself or more introverted. So I don't think there's a wrong path, and each person has to do their own journey. And this was mine.
Yeah. Such a good point that how much better is your writing now for all of the experiences that you've had, all of the interactions that you've had, all the people who you've seen in coming to you with their vulnerabilities and you holding space for them and now being able to relate to people in a deeper way than you ever would before. I mean, it's all for a reason. It all comes together. So I want, you started to talk about some of the fears, right? I said, get confident. You're like, well, maybe more confident. I don't know about totally confident, right? And you get some maybe feedback from others that creates some, I don't know if I want to say anxiety, but maybe a little bit of shakiness. You might get some feedback just even in your own mind when you're like, what am I doing? So I want to hear about some of the fears that have come up since starting this whole journey of writing this book. Because like you said, it's vulnerable and it's going to bring up your stuff. So what are some of the fears you've noticed come up? And clearly you didn't let them stop you, because here you are still draft complete, preparing for publication, ready to put it out into the world. So how did you work through them so they didn't paralyze you?
The biggest fear, obviously, is imposter syndrome. I've never done this. I haven't done it since I was a kid. Yet the amount of trust and learning of myself, I've proven time and time again that I can do this type of stuff, like through evidence of taking care of people when they're having heart attacks, strokes, serious things. I can handle that. I have written, a research paper that took me 3 years. So then writing something that I can do in the span of a year that I'm deeply passionate about, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And so I'm relying on the other things that I've done to support and keep my confidence high, because I've proven to myself that I can do this. And so looking at other pieces of your life, I think really helps to say, okay, I have evidence that I can figure this out. And so that's what I keep going back to. Anytime I get all worked up about it, I'm like, okay, what have I done in the past to get me to this point? I broke it down. Okay, so I break this down. I take it step by step, and I just keep moving forward. The other piece is get support. Anytime you do anything big, I always recommend you get support, because there's going to be times that you doubt it. Like, absolutely, you're human. I'm human. I doubt it. I mean, there's times I'm texting Kristen like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Talk me off the ledge. Like, I am not above asking for help now, because, through therapy, through coaching, through books, through a whole lot of just different modalities to help me learn myself, get to this point, accomplish goals, chase dreams. I've not done it alone, and you shouldn't do it alone. The other piece is the Creators Institute. They are very, very big on support. Don't write alone. If they haven't seen you put content down or write for a while, they're nudging you. They're saying, how you doing? What's going on? They really are big on the support piece. And so I wouldn't be where I'm at without all the support that I've gotten so far.
Okay. That I really want to highlight both of those things, because I think it's so huge. First of all, even if you've never done a particular thing before, you've never written a book before now.
No.
But you had completed things before. You had written other things before. You had felt doubt and moved through it before. All the individual moments of fear or uncertainty, you could go back and find an instance where you'd experienced a version of that, right, and moved through it. Another plug for any of you who are maybe wanting to be more creative, but it feels like it's been a long time. Maybe this is why. Maybe you had to go through enough life experiences to be able to see yourself through adversity, or see yourself overcome doubt and complete things. And so that when you bring it back, now you have more trust in yourself, right, to be able to work through it even when it gets hard. So that is so huge. You don't have to have done the thing. You've done enough elements of that thing, I promise, that you can remind yourself, I can handle this. I've handled the same thing in another scenario. Maybe I've handled worse. I've handled worse than this. I can get through this.
Right.
So that's huge.
Right. And I'm thinking about people, who haven't written, research papers or gone to, school, whatever. You've raised kids, you've run races, you've made it through hard situations. Even if you don't have any formal education or training, you've worked hard to get to where you're at. So you have experience of getting through hard, difficult situations that you can rely on to say, okay, I've done that. I can do this. So I don't want you to think like, okay, she's written all this stuff, but it's just using those examples to fuel my confidence and to keep us going in the direction that we want to go.
Exactly. You'd learn things you'd never learned before and got good at them. You had met deadlines before. Right. There's there's elements of whatever it is you want to do. If you want to start a business, if you want to do some sort of creative project, if there's something that has been nagging at you for a while, and maybe you even forgot that you loved it so much, and maybe this is triggering it. I hope that's doing it for some people. I hope we're triggering them.
That's the point.
To remember some of those old dreams that they've put on a dusty shelf somewhere, and bring them back to the surface. And you've done every element of what you want to do before. You just maybe haven't done it in that exact way before.
Right.
And sometimes sometimes the thing you've done is learn something new.
Yep.
I haven't done these things to start a business or to do this project before, but I've learned new stuff before and I figured it out and I moved on. So you can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And the support piece. Oh my goodness, is that huge, 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 huge. And I know we just said
at getting support.
So bad at asking for it. They're so bad at receiving it. I know we just said keep your ideas to yourself for a little while, but at some point you do have to share them. I do recommend sharing them with the safest people first, who are going to support you, who are going to want to be excited for you, maybe be invested in this for you, not the naysayers. Also the safe people are the ones who you want to be going to.
Yep.
So they're the people who you first talk to, but they're your lifelines as you're going through whatever it is you want to go through, because you're going to feel vulnerable. You're going to get nervous and insecure and scared and want to retreat. And so you need to have those people to remand you of how powerful you are, but also just to hold you accountable. So like you said, there's actually a lot of great groups and kind of pre-created paths or programs for probably whatever it is you want to do. So part of it might be, let's just find the containers that already exist that I can step into that are going to be really supportive and walk me through this, so I don't have to be so overwhelmed. But even if you don't have that, you might just get a buddy. You might just get a creative buddy who can be your go-to lifeline. So the support piece is so powerful. I want to hear your thought about overcoming the vulnerability and reaching out for support and asking for support.
Ooh, so it's a work in progress, right? Like this, for me, it's now super easy to reach out to you or my friend Ginny or my friend Sasha, my older sister Megan, because they are like my biggest cheerleaders. They're like, you can do anything. Also, what's been so supportive is my urgent care people. I swear they've seen me go through my whole transformation of people pleasing to pulling away, giving myself some space, now writing a book. Like I joke that they were my support group for my quarter life crisis. But, getting those people who really are your supporters and your cheerleaders and starting with them and just saying, hey, I need a little bit of TLC today. Can you do this? And usually people are like, oh my gosh, yes, I'd love to. And so that's a practice too. That was a big practice for me because I didn't rely on anyone. I didn't want to rely on anyone. It was very much, I'm independent, self-sufficient. I prided myself on that. That was part of my identity. And then I realized, whoa, I can't do this alone. Just through life experiences and all that happens. And so then I just started reaching out and feeling how much better I felt when I did reach out. But it is vulnerable. And I'm now really trying to give other women, especially, permission to be like, when you're feeling a certain way, reach out to me too. And I'll even, the ones that really struggle with it, that I've been with for a long time, I'll say, how you doing? And inevitably they're like, I needed to reach out. How did you know? And it's just one of those things that you'll get your turn to give it. So receive it and be okay with receiving it, because it's part of how we survive this, how we thrive, how we make it through.
Yes. And it's actually going to deepen your relationships too.
Oh, so much.
So beyond just supporting your goals and your dreams, you're going to end up feeling much closer to those people who end up being your support people, and they're going to start leaning on you sometimes too. So
right.
Win-win in that way. But I'm so glad you said that, because I think that's a real challenge for a lot of people. And it's a practice. You got to work up your muscle on that, because it's going to be vulnerable for a lot of people, but it's going to be worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Building that community is just, I think we miss that a lot, not to get too off on a tangent, but just being remote and pandemic and all the different stuff. And in general, we've lost a little bit of community. And so rebuilding that with the people that get you and are into the same things that you are, it starts small, and then it just starts building and building because you're around similar people. It's kind of like finding friends as an adult. That's part of it.
Which I know a lot of our people have come to us and asked, how do I do that? How do I make friends as an adult? Well, first of all, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to ask for help and to share how you're really feeling and what your goals are and all. I mean, you have to be an exposed person. But you can start, you can start small and work your way up. You can find some people who feel really safe to start with, but I promise it's going to be worth it. Loneliness is so prevalent in our society, especially in the last couple of years with the pandemic. Oh my goodness. So not only is this going to really support whatever your creative venture is, it's going to support so many aspects of your life. So
it does.
Big old highlighter on that one, because that's huge. We talked about how writing a book is one of the most in-depth personal development experiences you can put yourself through. What are a few things that you've learned about yourself through all this?
Oh, the trust. Like, I now trust myself that I can do it. The big thing is I realized how much I work off of flow. So that can be just knowing that I'm going to have a whole lot coming up, like holidays or all that, doing my creative writing, and then knowing that I can pause, recoup, recover, and then get back into it. The whole time I really leaned into it. When I was ready and had the motivation as well as the words and the emotions to do it, I did it, and it would just flow out of me. And then I could feel it. It was this really interesting, like, okay, I'm about ready to be too tired. And I've really put a lot of energy and emotion into it, because it's an emotional experience to write and to get people to experience what you're experiencing. So you went through those emotions and those themes, and it's exhausting. It's a different kind of exhausting than what I've ever experienced. So I'd use up all that energy, and then I'd be like, okay, I need to back away from this. And I would take like weeks off at a time to recuperate and relax and lean more into my physical body. I would even really enjoy like going to my day job and work, because it would just take me out of that part of my mind. And so I really learned how to work with the flow of my creative energy. And again, it sounds so woo-woo and like, kind of mystical, but it felt that way. Like, it was just like it would flow. And then I'd be like, okay, I've tapped it. And then I'd relax, and then I could feel it build, and then I'd let it flow again. And I constantly was ahead of the deadlines, almost by a month, because of how I let my intuition just guide me through this whole process.
Yes. If you didn't bring this up, I was going to bring it up.
Yeah.
Prompt you to bring it up, because this is such an important piece of proof, I think, for people who they find themselves getting really rigid when they want to achieve something, when they want to develop in some way, when they have a big goal or dream. I feel like people will get either really rigid and say, I have to do this every single day. And I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write, in this case, right? I'm going to write for an hour every single day, and I'm going to get this many words on the page every day. And it gets militant. Or they get into the complete other side of things, which is if and when I feel like writing, I will. And there's no structure and there's no deadlines and there's no framework. And it tends to be really sporadic. And oftentimes the procrastination and the fear can win out in that scenario.
Right. And it never gets done.
Exactly. And so I can attest to the fact that you danced this really beautiful dance of having some structure. The class that you went through had some built-in structure. There were deadlines. You had to have a certain number of words by a certain date in order to be ready to publish within the time frame. But within that big structure, you trusted your own intuition to guide you to when and how to write and when to pause. And I think a lot of people are afraid if they trust their intuition and they don't do the really militant thing, that it's not going to get done. It's not going to happen.
Right.
But not only did it work for you, you were ahead of every deadline.
Yeah.
It worked really well.
Wild. It was just like, oh, so well. For me, it did, and they walk through some other ways to get through those deadlines. And there's some people that just do better with deadlines and all this different stuff. But I don't know, if you can figure out your own flow, it really changes the whole urgency or intensity of it, I feel like.
Yeah. So you learned your creative process, you learned your own flow of inspiration and rest. And probably the biggest thing I heard you say was you developed such a level of self-trust that beyond what you had experienced before.
Absolutely. Yep.
Which doesn't just serve you in creative realms. That's gonna
that's gonna fall in. Yeah. I mean, even in difficult situations at work, in life, dealing with people, I just have this deeper confidence in myself because of this experience. Because I trusted it, and it was a really beautiful experience. And I know it just sounds so flowery, but it's also like I did a lot of work to understand who I am and what I need and when I need it. And so I think that was kind of the building blocks that allowed me to have this experience in such a flow and ease, I guess you could say.
Oh, that's so good. All right. I promised people, I teased people that we were going to get into the book itself and what it's about.
Yeah.
So I want to do that. I want to talk about what is this book about? And I'm actually curious because I don't even think I know the answer to this. When did you get the idea for the story?
Yeah. So I just posted on my my Instagram about the story. So it was a couple of years ago. We were on a walk. It was a hike in Glacier National Park, and I had a hip pain problem, but I was just like, oh, we can do this. Like I've hiked before and I'm relatively active. And so I went into the hike and I was like, ooh, my hip's really starting to hurt. And it was this alpine hike, and it was like 10 miles, and so we made it to the top, and I was like, oh, my hip's hurting. But there was no cell service. There was no, I couldn't get my phone to work, or I don't even think I had it at that point. And so I was like, wow, God, I wish I would have downloaded an audiobook. And I'm like, well, you don't have that. And, my husband and I had kind of exhausted our conversations. And so I was just like in so much pain that I tried to distract myself. And so I came up with the story as I was coming down off the mountain as a way to like distract myself from the pain. And so it definitely has a lot of like mountains, trees, mountainous setting in it because I just kept looking around being like, this is beautiful. Someone has to write about this. And of course I was like, well, that's not me. So that was almost 2 years ago. And so then I came down off the mountain and I started to write it down just in this random piece of paper. And then I was like, okay, well, that's out of me. And that was interesting. But that was how I came up with the story. So I started to have backstories and think about each character and how it would play out. And so that was kind of my initial experience of, I want to write this story about this woman.
I did not know that. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you didn't have an audiobook that day.
I know.
And
yeah, and it just stuck with me for 2 years. I kept thinking about it like constantly.
Yeah. I mean, this is something, just quick tangent on that. I don't want anybody to get in pain and have to distract themselves from pain. But imagine if you just didn't listen to an audiobook or didn't listen to a podcast for a drive somewhere.
I know.
And got bored and let your imagination go wherever it was going to go. I don't feel like we do that very often. So again, don't injure yourself to get a good idea, but maybe don't distract yourself, because boredom can be its own kind of pain, to be honest, for a lot of people.
Right.
So they'll distract themselves from the pain of being bored for a little while. And yet, if you don't distract yourself, magic might come out of it. So that was cool. I didn't know that.
And it really was like a download. Like it was like, oh my gosh, this is the setting. This is when I'd want to do it. This is the time period. And it just kind of downloaded from wherever. And so, it just was it was one of those things that if I was distracted some other way, it wouldn't have come to me, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I did not know the origin story. So that was fun for me. Okay. So give a quick little teaser about what the book is about.
So it's about a woman. She was right in her 20s, but it's set in the 1860s. So that would have been more like midlife for people back then. Life expectancy was about 40 years old. It's about this woman who lives in the mountains with her family, and her whole identity is wrapped up in her ability to take care, protect, provide for her sisters and her family. But what happens when our identity is tied up into something so specific, when it gets stripped away, what's left? And so the story is about this woman who has this identity sort of crisis about who she is, what she wants to be. And if you think about it, back in that time period, women didn't have a lot of options. They could get married, they could be prostitutes, they could be teachers, but they didn't make any money. And she was out in the mountains. So what was she going to do? So she has a couple love interests. And of course, there's a good guy and a bad guy, and kind of overcoming those times and survival. And how do you go from surviving to thriving when essentially your whole expectation for life was kind of stripped away?
Oh, I love this so much, because to me, this feels like a fiction story meshed with a deep, it's like self-help met fiction in this beautiful, deep transformation way, where I haven't read it yet. I'm so eager to read this book.
Yeah.
But I imagine the reader is going to be facing some of their own transformations and their own stuff, as your main character is going through the same thing. So that's why I was like, I want you to give a teaser about this book, because I feel like our people in particular are probably going to go nuts over this, because we have probably just because like attracts like, and Rachel and I are gigantic book nerds. And so between loving fictional stories, but also loving deep personal transformations, we get a lot of people who care about the same thing. So you get it all. You're going to get it all in this story. Yeah. That's what I'm so excited about.
Well, and the thing is, we've read so many self-help books and self-development books, and a lot of times it's like you're reading these other people's stories and saying, okay, yeah, I kind of get what they're coming from. But the amazing thing with fiction, if you if you're a good writer, is you feel like you're experiencing what the character is experiencing. And so vicariously, you get to experience what that would feel like through their story. And so, what I wanted to do was show examples of how to set boundaries, how to heal yourself, how to overcome or not. Do you choose to not do those things? Do you choose to stay in what you've known and how you've known it, and what those consequences would be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a how-to. It's more of a, here is one woman's experience that probably most of us can relate to,
exactly.
If not all of us can relate to, in our own version of that story. And there's healing and transformation by living vicariously through that. And that's why fiction is so powerful, if you ask me. It's so much more emotive, and it can transform you in ways that a self-help how-to guide just can't. I'm not dissing how to, self-help books. I have a whole bookshelf full of them, but it's a different experience. It's a much deeper and more emotional experience when you go into the story like that. So I love that that's the format that you chose here, and that it just came to you. Like, it was just a download.
Yeah.
So
it's actually research psychology on storytelling. So there's a book by Lisa Cronin. It's called Wired for Story. And that's how we taught each other stuff, like back around the fire pit with the cavemen, like, don't eat those berries because, George died, and so we that's how we learn. And so it's just a different form of teaching this message of, trusting yourself, hope, healing, love. There's also a generational trauma component to it, like why our grandparents did what they did, why our parents did what they did, and what they taught us, and how that affects us.
Oh, yeah. I can tell you a lot of people are going to relate to that part alone.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Well, and what's funny with people is I'll tell the story or tell them a little bit about it. And especially people closest to me, and they're like, is this story about me? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's about human experiences that we all go through the eyes of this woman set in this time period.
But the fact that they are asking, are you reading about me, is a good sign, in that they're seeing themselves in it. And I think everyone's going to see themselves in this story. So the reason I wanted you to come on the podcast this month in particular, I know I wanted to interview you, but I wanted to interview you this month because your book is it's in its pre-sale campaign currently. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. Well, and I kind of wanted to explain that to people. So I chose to do an indie publishing through New Degree Press because I would then own my work 100%. If you go through a traditional publishing route, then you get like a percentage, and it's right around like 2 to 3%. So unless it goes mega big, they have the ownership of your story, so they can do what they want with it. So it's really important to me. Yeah. So it's really important for me to actually own it. But what comes with that is I don't have a publicist. I don't have someone going out there telling people about my book, doing all that footwork. So that's what I'm doing. And then what we do is we pre-sale the book, and it's where people can buy the book ahead of time. And actually a lot of authors are doing this now. Even Stephen King does this on Amazon before, mainly to get the word out that your book's coming, and get people talking, get people excited about it, so that word of mouth helps spread the word. But also you get to be a part of doing the cover design. You get to be a part of the acknowledgements. And then also, if you want to be more involved, you can, help me with being a beta reader, or just kind of another part of it. There's a whole other package that comes with it so that you can be a part of the experience. Because there's a statistic out there, like 81% of people have writing a book on their bucket list, and only like 2% actually do. I kind of want to bring people along and be like, you can do this. Like, you can do this. Here's an example. I didn't do it alone. I have a community that supports me. And so it becomes kind of a bigger experience.
Yeah, I love modeling that, but I also love bringing people in and saying, hey, I'm doing this thing and I'm trying to do it in a way that feels very aligned, where this is my work and I want to maintain the rights to it. And frankly, I think you should.
Right.
And so as part of that, you're fully invested financially and time-wise and in the whole process in a way that you maybe wouldn't be otherwise. And, people can support that. And I actually think a lot of our people would love to support that. So we are going to have a link, and it'll be on our website. It'll be in the show notes. We're going to have it as many places as we can. So wherever you're listening to this episode, you'll be able to go find the link to the pre-sale campaign where you can go and pre-order the book and support Terece, and maybe just kind of see how she's doing it too. If you're curious, if this is a goal of yours, how has she gone through this, and what does it look like to promote your own book? So I think
reach out
as a model,
it's
cool that you're doing it that way too.
Yeah. And truly, like, I want people to experience this. If it's something they really want to do, I am an open book, no pun intended, but contact me and we can talk about it for sure.
And how would you like them to contact you?
So my author Instagram is Terece Hahn. That's TereCehahn_author. And that's the one that I'm posting most frequently on. And then if you're on Facebook, then it's Terece Hahn, just my personal Facebook page. So
perfect. Okay, we're going to link to those too. So go find Terece and follow her and buy her book and ask her questions and live in Terece's world with her for a little while. Thank you so much. This was, our conversations are always wonderful. I've told you many times before, I wish I could just record all of them because there's always these gold nuggets, but I'm glad we did this time. And people got to hear a little bit about I was going to say about your story, and then your story that you wrote, both.
My story. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll send people on their way. But I really believe that there's going to be so much depth and transformation in your writing, so much emotion in your writing, because that's just who you are. And because you're really committed to your craft and you're really committed to, expressing fully. I mean, go big and then go home, right? You're going to go big and then you're probably going to take a nice long nap after this is all out in the world. Yeah. But we're in the middle of the going big part. So please go support Terece, and I will talk to you soon.
Okay, so we're going to link to the book teaser video that you can check out in the show notes.
We didn't even mention this. So not only does she have the whole pre-launch campaign, which we will link to, and I really, really hope some of you go pre-order this book, not only because we want to support Terece, but also because I'm telling you, I know enough about this story. I've been coaching her all along and chatting with her all along. Our people are going to love this story. It is the perfect combination of deep identity crisis, personal development, spiritual kind of awakening with a novel. Like, imagine Yellowstone. No, not Yellowstone. 1883. Is that the spinoff?
I don't watch either of them, but yes, I can.
I feel like there's like an 1883 vibe going on in terms of the setting and the characters, but infuse some deep personal identity work at the same time. Like,
I'm assuming there's some hot people in this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Well, then I'm down.
Yeah. No, there's a love triangle.
It's all about. Yeah. You don't have to say anything other than that. I'm down.
So in addition to that, they made her publishing company and her together worked to make this video, this teaser video. It is incredible. it makes me feel like, first of all, this should be a show. And it makes me immediately want to go watch the show.
Great.
So if you're curious to hear a little bit more about what is this whole book about, watch that video, go to the pre-launch campaign, and let's spread the word about Terece's brilliant writing.
And you can also pre-order it in the link that we will provide in the show notes. If you're looking for something to read, which I know most of you always are.
I mean, we attract a lot of book nerds because we are book nerds, and like attracts like.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Okay. Well, once again, happy anniversary
to us.
to us. And I'm glad that our anniversary got to be shared by someone who's been following us and coaching with us for so long. It feels appropriate.
It does feel appropriate.
Yeah. It's like Terece is our child and the book is our grandchild.
Oh, I love that.
And I don't think that she would be offended that I just said that.
No, I don't think she would at all. I think she'd be honored.
Our union has produced such prosperity. Creatively, energetically, emotionally.
No wonder I feel so attached to this book. Oh, attached to this book. That's good.
You didn't do that on purpose.
I did not do that on purpose.
Kristen's not that clever with
I caught myself in the middle of it and was pleased.
And that's how you know she's not a comedian, is because she'll call out the funny thing that she just said because it's
accidentally
so novel. Okay. All right. Well, that's enough. And we will be back next Friday with some kind of side chat.
Okay. We'll see you then.
Bye.